Hello, my friends. Today is a very special interview. It is with none other than Mallika Chopra, who happens to be my daughter, but also the author of multiple books for adults and children. And this book just arrived in the mail today. Publication date is as we speak. And it's a very short book, but a delightful read. Buddha and the Rose. Malika, welcome to this conversation.
Thank you. So yes, I'm very excited. This is the new book, Buddha and the Rose. And I think this is my 8th book, believe it or not. And I do think this is one of the books I'm most proud of because I think it's very simple. It's a beautiful story. It's illustrated magically, but ultimately it's through the lens of a young girl and having that aha awakening moment, which I think in our days these days we need moments of joy and wonder, and so I think it's coming out at the right time as well.
Yeah, I was looking at the illustrations. Of course, those who are scholars of Buddhism do know the silent lecture that is Buddha's famous sermon to his disciples, especially Ananda. But you portrayed it very well through the mind and the eyes and the understanding of a young girl that had an aha moment just by being in simple awareness. You know, that was Buddha's genius, by the way, that he could come to profound conclusions in simple awareness and just in the stillness of observation. So tell us a little bit about this book. What is the theme? There are beautiful illustrations. Like, here she says, and I saw it in that moment. I felt totally awake, alive, like I had never felt before. Ever since Buddha, we use that word awakening. His last words were exactly that when he was asked, who are you? Are you a prophet, messenger, Messiah? He said no. So finally, when people got frustrated, said, you've got to tell us who you are before you die. He said, I'm awake. I'm awake. So talk to us about this moment and what the theme is in the book.
So first of all, yes, I love the illustrations of this book, which is what I'm so proud of. I actually asked specifically my publishers to find a young Indian artist. So Neha Rawat is the very talented artist who brought these words to life. So as you mentioned, this is called the silent lecture that Buddha gave, where he was with one of his students and he just held a rose and he didn't say anything. And I decided to do this through the perspective of a little girl. And the girl that I'm working with some of history, but I chose a young girl named Sujata, who in history it is said was the milkmaid who gave Buddha the milk that broke his fast. So she was very older when she did that, but I brought a young girl because I also think it's really important as we look at history and we tell stories that we bring in new voices, more women, because we don't see many women in a lot of these stories. So I very purposely wanted a young girl. I wanted a young Indian woman to illustrate this book. And I'm really grateful to my publisher who allowed that. So the lecture was Buddha was sitting, he only held a rose and everyone was confused, what's he saying? And so I bring that into Sujata in the audience with other children because Buddha loved to talk with children as well. And so I thought, let's kind of play on that element of the historical story. And basically everyone's confused and doesn't know what he's saying. And then as she sits there, she does have an aha moment where she realizes what Buddha is illustrating is that this rose is an aspect of who we all are. And that the rose really represents everything from the seed that is planted in the ground to, you know, the birds, the sun, the earth, that's nurturing that. I've talked about intention often in my other books. So, you know, the seed and the rose is a great example of that. And then how it manifests into a beautiful flower. But then even when it is a flower, you know, that rose helps the bees who are making honey. It helps celebrations, you know, at weddings, at funerals. And the rose really is part of this larger continuum. And so what I wanted to do is kind of bring that aha moment. And for children, and this is a children's book, for children early on, helping them understand how everything is connected. And so some of the things that I want to do with children as we move forward through this book, and for anyone who's a teacher or a parent with the book, I think one can take any object and you can think about, what did it take for this object to be in my hand at this particular moment? Who are the people? What are the resources? And then what do we do with that object as well? So you can take anything and understand that we're part of a much larger fabric and that we are all connected. And so I'm recommending often with parents is like at the dinner table when you're having a meal, you know, a mindful meal is also being conscious of the colors, the tastes, the smells, but there's also a story behind that. And there are people associated with that, all of whom have their own stories. And there's a connection with the universe, everything from, you know, the earth and the ground that's nurturing all this food and growing all this food, but also then the connection to the stars and the galaxy and the infinity of time and space. So the simple story, hopefully, more importantly than understanding that, brings for children an experience of that.
Yeah, it's very important to have the experience because intellectually we all get this. So I just want to share with the audience just a few pages from the beginning. Here he is, Buddha, under the tree, the Bodhi tree. It's called the Bodhi tree because it's the tree of enlightenment, and Buddha means the awakened one. It says, Buddha sat, a rose in his hand. And of course, Buddha also means the awakened one. And here he gazed at the flower and smiled. It was a smile from inside, a smile of peace, of gratitude, of quiet joy. A smile that swept across the crowd, and the feeling was happiness. So it starts very simply into the fact that in the stillness, there was revelation. In the silence, there was revelation. That's what Buddha is known for. I mean, even today, when we talk about mindfulness, we forget that the first mindful practice was just being mindful of the breath. And from there, so many things, you know, whatever arises, subsides, the law of impermanence. If you hold on to your breath, you will suffocate, let go and flow. All experience is a sensation that arises and subsides, and that every object is the history of the universe. What Thich Nhat Hanh called not only the interdependence of all things, but the interbeingness, you know, that we are interbeings in the interisness, and that from just a very simple principle, also all the other principles of empathy, if you're all inseparable, then empathy, compassion, obviously the desire to alleviate suffering, and then what we call love in action, karma yoga, all follow from a simple, still silence. This is the beauty of existence that we have lost. I don't want to, let people know everything in the book. They should buy it and read it. But here, see the implications of a rose. You said celebration, funerals, life experiences, temples, festivals, dancing. all from looking at a rose. I actually remember something which you may or may not remember, Malika, which is Ma, your grandmother. When we used to eat food, she would say, "Dane dane mein likha hai khane wale ka naam," which meant that in every grain of rice is the history of the universe, but also the name of the one who's going to eat it. Because you are the recipient of this gift of the universe at this moment with gratitude. So that grain has the history of the universe, but it was meant for you. So
absolutely. And I think that's the message here. And it's interesting that you bring up Ma, because you actually have a great story about Ma and the rose, and receiving the rose from Nehru and how that rose represented, you know, the fight for freedom, and liberation, and birth, for a new nation. So, you know, actually the rose, even in our family, has that
huge
story.
significance. Yeah, huge significance. What age group do you think this is best for?
Yeah, so I have now, like I said, I feel so lucky because I have several books now. So both the Buddha and the Rose, and here I have My Body as a Rainbow, which is my other book for young children. So these are really picture books, you know, in that 2 to 6 year old, when your child is sitting in your lap and you're reading a book to them. And I really see these as it's the experience of connecting and of love, and for a child to feel, just as you said, you know, and that's why we started with the book. It was more Buddha smiles from inside, and we all felt that smile and we felt that peace. And so I hope that this can be a tool for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, librarians, to connect with children in that space of empathy, in that space of loving kindness. Of course, kids, you know, can read these books on their own when they start to read, but these are kind of targeted to younger children. The Just Be series, my other 3 books, Just Breathe, Just Feel, and Just Be You, are more targeted to 8 to 12-year-olds and developmentally for an age of when children are starting to read and understand things themselves. So one of the nice feedback I'm getting as I am sharing this book through interviews is a lot of adults are just enjoying the experience of reading the book. I think the illustrator did a beautiful job of bringing the words to life. And I think we all need aha moments. And hopefully in reading this book, it's a very simple, easy experience, but in and of itself, I hope that it does help people get a sense of wonder themselves.
So the book is called Buddha and the Rose, Mallika Chopra, illustrated by Neha Rawat. I agree that the illustrations are gorgeous. And then dedication to my sweet babies, now young ladies. I love you, Tara and Leela. And then Man, Papa, thank you for always supporting me. Very sweet. Let's go over the other books. So they are actually this is for a younger demographic than your other books.
Yeah, so I have this.
Let's go over a few of the other books.
So yeah. Buddha and the Rose and My Body is a Rainbow. My Body is a Rainbow is really, you can think of it as a guided meditation for children. It goes through the chakras and adds affirmations and breathing. So it's really something that is a super simple guide for little kids. For teachers and librarians, it's great because you just can read it in the classroom, and you're walking kids through the colors of the chakras and affirmations like, I am safe, I am creative, I am loved, I am unique, you know, I am. So we kind of go through that. And that book has done really well, and it helped me kind of do more of these books for children. Before that, you know, I've developed a really lovely relationship with my publisher where we're really looking to build a library of books for children. So it began with Just Breathe, which is meditation, mindfulness, movement, and more, which are very simple how-to exercises for children, but written in a way for 8 to 12-year-olds. So again, adults have found it very helpful, but this should be a book that a kid can pick up, open to any page, and actually have a very practical exercise. So that was more how to. Then I did Just Feel, which is focused on social and emotional awareness, and really thinking about our feelings, our emotions. How do we connect with them? How do we release things like, anger and sadness, and really affirming for children that it's normal and it's okay to have the range of feelings. And it's more about how do we self-regulate, and how do we release them as well, so they're not building up angers and building up. We do things like name it to tame it, and different very practical exercises for children to recognize feelings and release emotions and communicate, ask for help. So that is Just Feel. And then Just Be You is a book for 8 to 12-year-olds on self-reflection. And so, I base that around the 4 questions. Who am I? What do I want? How can I serve? And what am I grateful for? But with each one of those, we go deeper, because, children, like adults, but especially children, early on, they're told, oh, you're a soccer player, you're a dancer, you're an A student. And kids start to define themselves by all the labels. And so we really, in that book, help children understand that they are more than their labels, and to really understand who they are, what their passions are, what do they want, not just the material things, but what are the experiences they want. Bring in exercises like gratitude and intention as well. And then most importantly, helping them kind of think about their sense of purpose, in the world, and having some ways to give back and serve, because we know that helps children feel happier and actually healthier and more connected to others. So those are my so
And then
far.
there was a book in the beginning for adults as well.
So I have 3 books. So all of my books have been part of my journey. So my first 2 books were called 100 Promises to My Baby and 100 Questions from My Child, which are really about conscious parenting and being a more mindful parent in the choices that we make and how we engage with our children and answer their questions. So those I wrote when my kids were born and earlier in my career. And then I was very lucky with Living with Intent, my somewhat messy journey to purpose, peace, and joy, which I think really anchored me just in the work that I'm doing, because it's about being a busy mom with a career and trying to find a sense of self when you're defined by everybody else, as well as just the practical of, many of us are just overwhelmed and exhausted, and we are looking for tools to help us. And then, that has taken me into the corporate space, into many leadership conferences for women, because I think they can relate to my story as I share, as I said, my somewhat messy journey to finding more peace and purpose and happiness. So yes.
I'm speaking to Mallika Chopra, the author of Buddha and the Rose, and the author of 8 books, including books for adults as well, and for parents and conscious parenting. What many of you might not know, my dear friends, is that sometimes the journey of a lifetime begins with just a simple insight. And this is the simplest insight that could begin the journey of a lifetime, not only for your children, but for you. And although in recent years, non-dual philosophy has become very popular, the nature of reality as being interdependent and entangled is becoming clear. Not many people realize that It was the Buddha 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Jesus Christ, who created the framework for what is now emerging as the only real scientific understanding of the universe, as being conceived, constructed, governed, and coming into existence in a unified consciousness. And so 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, number one. Number two, there are causes for suffering. Number three, there's a way out. And number four, here's the way out, the Eightfold Path through enlightenment. And it all began with a simple awareness and non-judgmental observation that actually this non-judgmental observation of the self and of the other led to an extraordinary revelation that the self and the other are inseparably woven as one consciousness, but different minds and bodies. And right now, as we look at the world, every 40 seconds, somebody is dying from suicide. Teen depression has become rampant. It's now become the second most common cause of death amongst teens is suicide. And I think, Malika, maybe you would agree that it is because our society, we have been so overshadowed by the projection of a physical world, and we have never had time to even sit and do nothing, or just be, as one of your books says, or just feel, as one of your other books says, or just reflect, as you've been talking about. These are simple tools to be, to feel, to reflect. They don't require intellectual understanding. And intellectual understanding doesn't really help. In fact, it increases the confusion sometimes. But when you can sit in simple awareness, as this beautiful illustration shows, under the tree, with all of nature expressing itself right here, then there is insight, and insight leads to revelation. And ultimately, that's the only thing that will decrease our suffering. So first of all, this is a great service that you're providing. But secondly, I would encourage adults to do exactly what you recommend, to read it aloud to their children and maybe even to their grandchildren. I think it would be even more enjoyable to read it to grandchildren. Now that the book is coming out, I hope you're going to be doing a tour and talking about the book and bringing these insights to a society that so desperately needs them right now.
Yeah, no, and I hope that the goal of the book, the intention of the book, is actually in reading the book, you slow down, you take deep breaths, and the book should be the experience rather than worrying about everything else. And that's, like I said, I hope that the intention behind the book is to just bring back some aha, a breathing of sense of wonder. And genuinely speaking, we get that from our children, which is why I'm so thrilled to be writing these books for children, because whenever I interact with children around these books, and I'm so excited to do it around this book, they get it right away. There's no understanding it. They just get it. So, and as an adult, when you experience that with a child, it's really powerful.
Yeah, and those words are important. They get it. And getting it is even more than understanding it. Getting it is visceral. And understanding it can be sometimes just intellectual. And it's a joy to see anyone get it, particularly a child. And it all begins with this thing which is so desperately needed in our society: silence. He turned to all of us and waited patiently in silence. Congratulations, Malika, and onward. I know you're coming to New York for a book tour as well and traveling elsewhere. And to all the parents and grandparents, an opportunity for you to share intimate moments with your children, grandchildren, and learn from them and be with them and feel with them and get it with them beyond simple understanding. Any last words?
No, I think I'd add also to teachers and librarians and, anyone who's guiding children. And I know in our community at Chopra, we have so many people who are interacting in classrooms and doing work with children. And so, I just would ask that I love to hear your experiences, especially as we focus on education at Chopra Global, about how we can provide more resources to make impact in everyone's community.
Wonderful. Congratulations again. And I know that Mom has already read the book as soon as it arrived. So thank you again.